Coming up on What's the Hoops, future SDSU Jackrabbit Emilee Fox goes over 2,000 career points and has her team on a roll. Plus, Sioux Falls Christian is the best team in Class A and maybe the entire state. Don't look now, but they might be getting even better. Also, we're going to throw out the radar and dig even deeper to find some of the most overlooked teams in all 6 classes of South Dakota high school basketball. All that, plus we look ahead to the biggest upcoming games as we do every week, coming up on What's the Hoops. What's up? It's What's the Hoops with Darron, Wallace, and Jason Andera. Jandy, of course, if you're a friend of the show. And another week of high school basketball has come and gone. We've got some big results. We've got some teams that were hot that no longer are. We've got some teams that are, like you said, flying under the radar that are kind of starting to get a little bit more notoriety. Things are shaking up as we get closer to playoff time.
That's a big theme of this week's show is we're getting close. We're getting close to playoff time, and there's still some teams we haven't talked about all year. That's what we've got under the radar in the entire middle section of this show. Can't wait to talk about that.
Yeah, before we get going on the meat of the show, we would like to still call on all you dunkers out there. Next week, we're going to feature some of the best in-game dunkers in the entire state. And if you think you are one, please send to me or Jandy your dunk clips. You can send your clips to me on Instagram at @NotDarron or to Jandy on Instagram at Andera Midco, or you can find us on X, formerly known as Twitter, myself, D. Wallace Midco, and Jandy and Darron Midco over there as well. We might even have a surprise clip for you. We won't get into too many details, but we want to see those dunks, people, so please send them in.
There's still time to improve your dunking skills, and I think if you have any questions, DM Darron. He can teach you how to dunk. You got a week left to get those in.
I want to see you guys dunk, so please, we got it all. We're gonna have scorecards. It's gonna be blown up. It's gonna be awesome. All right, so moving on into the hoops. What's happening in the high school hoop scene? Well, let's start with Emilee Fox. She went over 2,000 career points and a 60-41 win over Chamberlain. Mount Vernon Plankinton has now won 6 of 7 of the last 7 games and is 12-3 overall. Last year, USD Coyote teammates Olivia Kiefer and Avery Broughton hit the 2,000-point mark. Of course, Olivia, most notably, has been really contributing for USD this year. Now Emilee Fox kind of following in her shoes. Jill Young of Mitchell Christian, who went on to start SDSU, is the all-time leader with over 3,000 career points, 3,317. Jandy,
I don't know if she'll make
about Emilee Fox?
I don't know if she'll make that, but yeah, we had those 2 players who went on to play in the Summit League last year hit that 2,000 mark, and Emilee Fox this year has done it for Mount Vernon Plankinton. She's been playing starting basically since she was an 8th grader, and boy, she is so fun to watch. I had a chance to go check her out on Tuesday night. She put up 24 points in the first half against Del Rapids, was unstoppable. She's going to go up that ladder a little bit higher on the all-time scoring list before this season's over, but under the radar a little bit, their team's playing really well. They did lose to Ethan, a number 1 team in Class B on Monday night. But this is a team that's on fire, and if they put their trust in Emilee Fox, they could pull some upsets on the way to possibly getting to the state tournament.
Yeah, Fox, of course, a part of that really, really incredible SDSU class coming in next year. Really excited to see what they'll do with the collegiate level. But right now, all 5 of them are playing exceptionally well, and congratulations to Emilee on reaching a milestone that, I mean, only 1% of maybe all high school basketball players, maybe even less than that, will even reach. Tough to score 1,000, so to do it twice is something.
It's pretty good player.
Moving on, let's talk about the T area girls. They knocked off number 3 in AA Harrisburg. T led 27-24 at half. Harrisburg took the lead in the 3rd quarter, but T ended up coming back and winning that game. Katie Fazika, we talked about that SDSU class coming in.
There's another one.
32 points, 12 rebounds. McKinley Lawrence and 15 points. I mean, before we get into some sounds from this game, what can you say about what T's doing and specifically what Katie Vasika has been doing?
Well, Katie Vasika, she's unstoppable. Tuesday night, they really tried to go at Katie and stop her and play her with some different junk defenses. She continued to score and continued to score. She is a player that can carry a team, and she carried her team to a lead. And even though they got down for a little bit in that game to the number 3 team in AA, this is a class above of where T usually plays, and they were still able to get that W. So she can carry a team, this T area team. You know, obviously needs Katie Vasika to play well, but they've got a lot of other pieces, some good shooters from the outside. Ellie Kleberg hit a couple of big threes in that game. Mara Grant, one of the best post players in all of Class A. This T team is dangerous, even though they're number 9 in seed points right now in Class A, because they play such a tough competition. I have a feeling they're going to get to the state tournament this year. This is something that T area has not done in their history, get to the state tournament. But under Katie Vasika, they're ready to make a charge. Can't wait to see what this team has up their sleeves.
Yeah, Vasika been leading the way all season long for T area. Let's hear what she had to say after her really special 32-point performance.
Really a team effort, everyone can score, so we have to look at everybody, and that just helped me get open shots. It's really fun because it's good competition, and it's not just an easy win, and we get to show how good we can be. Yeah, we really hustled. We went after all the loose balls and everything, and we put up a good fight. Yeah, we're just trying to use the clock so they can't come down and get shots, and come back, and we really just tried to protect the ball. Really just staying in the close games. Sometimes we let the other team go on a run, and we just need to stay strong throughout the whole game. It's just super fun being able to play a super tough game and come out on top.
All right, we've got some shakeups in the standings, both in the polls and even as far as seed points goes. We'll start in Girls A, Flandreau, but they beat Centerville on Saturday in a makeup game from the Hanson Classic, 58-43 after going 20-6 and getting to the state tournament last year with no seniors. Head coach Megan Severson says, "I definitely catch myself sitting back and thinking, wow, this is a special group. They're experienced, they're confident, and on top of that, when you look at them on the court, they're long, they're athletic, they're skilled. They're 17-0 right now, Jandy. I feel like we haven't talked about them any other week on our show. It's probably time to start giving them some love."
Time to talk about Flandreau. This is a good team, and you're right. Coach Severson loves this team. Now, one of the reasons she loves them is because you can't focus on one player. We keep talking about these SDSU players. They've got one too. Claire Shepard heading to SDSU next year, part of that Fab 5 group. But you can't focus on her because they've got multiple players in double digits. 3 girls who are averaging right around that 15-point and another one with 10 points per game. And I think that's the key to this Flandreau team. They're really hard to stop because there's so many different players that can get it done. And they did go under the radar a little bit this year with no seniors on last year's team. You thought maybe they would come in a little bit more hyped. But I think it's because in the past, they've been hyped and they haven't quite gotten to that elite level. And now they seem like they belong on that elite level.
Yeah, Flandreau 8-0 against teams over 500 this season. So they've got some impressive wins on their resume, and they're 17-0, and they deserve all the credit in the world for doing what they've done this year. Let's move on to the boys' side of things. There's a new number 1 in Boys B, Jandy. White River is the 4th team to be ranked number 1 this season. Class B has been a mess this year on the boys' side.
A lot of good teams.
After losing Joe Seiler to graduation, people thought White River may drop off, but they're undefeated against Class B competition this year, and that includes wins over Custer, Del Rapids, St. Mary, and Phillips. So in that Class B section, who stands above the rest? Does anyone stand above the rest, or do you expect this to kind of continue with this carousel at the number 1 seed?
You mentioned it. We've had 4 teams now. DeSmet, Castlewood, Viborg, Hurley, now White River at number 1, and then White River right after being branded number 1 loses to Pine Ridge. Now that's a good ranked Class A team. No shame in that loss. But how long can White River stay in that number 1 spot? Well, they've got another couple tough games coming up that will show if they really are that team or if they're just one of maybe 5 or 6 teams that can play really well in the Class B level. I think they're very good. It's a lot of fun because they've got Nick Marshall, who stepped up this year, his game. And you talked about Joe Seiler, went on to play at SDSU, one of the best players we've seen in Class B over the last 20 years. When he left, I think people kind of just thought, oh, White River, take a seat, take a back seat, even though this is a team that's been to the state tournament 17 straight years in a row. But Nick Marshall has really resurrected this team. He is so fun to watch. And then they brought in Jordan Euler to play on the front line. They've got some talent on this team. White River is definitely a team you do not want to overlook in Class B.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Class B playoffs because it's going to be crazy, insane. It seems like just everybody's beating everybody. So you never even know who's really the top dog. So we'll see if White River can hold on to their spot at all.
I don't think it matters who ends up number 1 in the rankings because there's going to be, like I said, 5 or 6 real legit contenders when it comes down to playing the state tournament.
All right, let's move on to another class. Specifically, let's talk about Sioux Falls Christian. Another unbelievable week for them. They scored 90 points
90
against Jefferson.
These are 32-minute games, folks.
Yeah, 32-minute games. There's teams that don't even score 40 points in a game. Sioux Falls Christian scored 90. Griffin Goodberry had 24 points. He was 10 of 12. Britton Mulder returned with 15 points on 3 of 4 from behind the line. Also had 4 steals, so he was doing it both ways for Sioux Falls Christian. And man, they also beat Lincoln 61-53.
Yeah.
So Sioux Falls Christian's been every bit as impressive as you could ask, and they're also doing this without any seniors. So
Exactly.
they're gonna be here to stay for a while.
Yeah, and we said in the beginning in the tease they might be getting better. Well, the reason we say that is because of Britton Mulder. You talked about him. He came back in that Jefferson game, exploded. He hadn't played with them the entire season up until this point. He's back in the rotation now and could be one of their best shooters from the outside. So yes, watch out. Christian is going to continue to improve. And are they the best team in the state regardless of class? They've been playing all these AA teams and not having a problem. I think if you're Mitchell, you say, hey, hold on a second. We got a pretty good team going this year. But if I'm Sioux Falls Christian, I am not afraid to play anybody. And I'd love to ask you guys out there, if you think Sioux Falls Christian is the best team in the state regardless of class, at this point, it's hard to argue with them.
Yeah, they've got probably the best resume amongst any team. I mean, we talk about Class B, not to say that they should be dismissed, but you look at all the talent in Class B, all those good teams, seems like no one can stay number one, so they're really competitive on that front. But Sioux Falls Christian's been beating every challenge that has faced them. They've handled it relatively easily. I think that should also be noted that they're winning games comfortably. So to score 90 points, to beat Lincoln by 8 points, they'll be playing Western Christian on Thursday. That'll be a test for them. Western Christian's 15-1. But man, Sioux Falls Christian is really special.
That's going to be a test, by the way, against Western Christian. I think it's a team Sioux Falls Christian can match up with and even get the win. But the last 2 seasons in a row, Sioux Falls Christian has played Western Christian and not quite gotten the win. So this could be a kind of monumental win for them if they can, play Northwest Iowa, one of the best teams in Northwest Iowa, and take care of the business on Thursday night.
Yeah, last year lost to Western Christian by 25 points. So they'll have revenge on their mind. Let's take a look at some under-the-radar teams. There's a lot of teams we haven't really talked about this year. We've been kind of talking about a lot of the same teams, but there are some teams that have been flying low but playing at a high level. So we'll start in Girls B with Arlington. Their only losses are to Flandreau and Ethan, two teams that were ranked at very different points in the year.
Two number 1 teams right
now.
now.
Number 1, Adeline Stephenson, Jalissa Stephenson, and Issy Stephenson. I'm assuming they're related.
We've got a couple twins and a younger sister.
Yeah, they've been great. And Harley Johnson's been great on defense as well. What can you say about Arlington?
Yeah, I think people dismiss them. They're not getting mentioned in the rankings right now, but you look at that. They've lost to number 1. They've lost to Ethan and Flandreau. That's it. 2 teams that are number 1 in each of their classes. They are 15-2 so far this year. That's the best start they've ever had at Arlington. And I'll tell you what, again, just 1 senior on this team. Harley Johnson is the only senior. So this group, kind of like Flandreau last year, I think is going to improve even more. I think this year they're getting their feet wet. They got some huge wins this year. Beating Florence Henry, that was huge because in years past they couldn't quite knock them off. This year they did. Parkston, they were losing by double digits in that game. That's a Class A team above them. They were losing by double digits and came back and won. That was huge for their confidence. And as I talked to their head coach, Tara King, she said, we've got a bunch of confidence already, but those 2 wins really solidified us. We've got a train of momentum behind us now. And I would not sleep on Arlington as a team to watch in Class B girls basketball.
And shout out to you, Arlington. Look out the rest of Girls B because Arlington is not going anywhere anytime soon. Let's move over to Girls A. Elk Point-Jefferson. They're 14-2 this year. They've won 8 straight since losing to Vermilion. They have a balanced attack, a relatively young team led by Kara Schmitz, Ashley Brewer, Caitlin Van Rokel, Bentley Colbaum, and Grace Peed. Their best wins against Lennox, 57-54. They will have a test coming up against Beersford, who's 10-5 this year, Centerville, and they'll get to face Katie Vasika and T area next week, so that'll be a tough test. But Elk Point-Jefferson, what's moving you about them this year?
Well, this is interesting because right now they definitely are under the radar. They only have those 2 losses. Vermilion, a very good rivalry game team that they lost to. But if they can get through these next 3 games, they won't be under any radar anymore because you're playing a strong Beersford team. You're playing Centerville, a team that's ranked in Class B. And then, of course, like you said, Katie Vasika's T-Area Titans, who are playing as well as they've played all season long. So if you can win 2 out of those 3, I think Elk Point-Jefferson's definitely not under the radar anymore.
Yeah, hard to sleep on a team that can get through that gauntlet. Big test for them coming up. Don't sleep on Elk Point-Jefferson. Now let's move up to girls AA. Brandon Valley's been flying under the radar for you. They started 1-3. Since then, they've won 10 games in a row. Olivia Paget has had back-to-back monster games, huge performances from her. Their best win this year, a 44-41 win over Marshall from Minnesota. They're 13-1, that Marshall team. Their next test is going to be February 20th at Mitchell, who we've talked about them a lot this year, how they've been really just a super sound team, really solid team. So that should be a good matchup. What do you say about Brandon Valley?
Well, when they started the year 1-3, they had lost Hillary Barons, their best player, who was the player of the year in Class AA last year. Again, we kind of thought, well, maybe a year or two, Brandon Valley can kind of start stepping up. They started out 1-3 against a really tough competition, but then they caught fire. They started sharing the ball better. They started playing smarter. They play really good team defense. And Olivia Paget, she's been probably their best player all season long, but the last 2 games she's had near 30 points in each of those 2 games. Now they've got a legitimate scorer to go to as well. Brandon Valley is a team you got to worry about because there's not a ton of teams in AA right now that have had the consistency that the Lynx have had. Only O'Gorman and Mitchell have. These other teams, they can play well or they can play down, but huge win for them Tuesday night against Washington, another team that, you kind of gauge yourself by playing the state champs. Well, they played really well on Tuesday.
Yeah, O'Gorman and Mitchell have kind of separated themselves from the pack, but Brandon Valley's making a statement.
I think they're right there.
We're there too. Let's take a step over to the boys' side of things. We'll start in B and work our way up. We've got 2 teams in Class B who you think have gone a little bit under the radar, Jandy. So we'll look at Wessington Springs and Faith. Wessington Springs right now, they're ranked number 5 in the Class B poll, the media poll that comes out every week. They're on a 14-game winning streak. They beat Wolsey Wessington handily this past Tuesday. Their best win this year is an 11-point win over Ethan, who's 13-3, and a 68-46, a 22-point win over Faulkton, who's 12-3 this year. Their only loss this season has come to Howard.
Yeah, their only loss came early in the season, and since then haven't had a lot of huge tests, and I think that's why they're still under the radar. But these teams that they're beating, these good teams they're beating handily. And you said it, Wolsey Wessington was a huge win for them. They got 6 players that can all score on a given night. Parker Graff, Ryder Mikulik, Colby Flowers, Blake Larson, Brock Kruger, and Carter Mebius have all been really solid for them. One of their top goals was to get better defensively. That's the challenge that Kenny Heater, their head coach, gave them this year. Well, they've done exactly that. They gave up 50 points a game last year, and they've dropped that down to 41.6 this year. They have accepted the challenge to go play defense to win games, and it's working.
Yeah, defense wins championships, right, Jandy?
That's right.
Another team that's playing really well this season in Class B is Faith. Their only loss is to Class A Hot Springs, lost by 7 points in that one. They've got Caden Selby, who had 32 against Harding County, and then 24 against Lemon. He's been really impressive this year. Their best win is against Lemon, who's 12-2 this year, last Saturday. Beat him by more than 20 points.
Yeah.
They do have a test coming up against Mobridge on Friday. What can you say about Faith?
Faith's another team that, years past, they've struggled so much to get into that elite category. They've always been good, but this year, I don't know if anybody can match up with them size-wise. I think they get to the B tournament, they're going to surprise a lot of people. They have guys like Caden Selby, Tucker Miller, who are both 6'7". Then they got Drew Harper and Jackson Shower, who are both big guards. Shower, by the way, has had multiple 30-point games this year. And then Caden Selby, they're counting his dunks this year, 18 dunks for the 6'7" guy, and he's shooting 40%. So you got a pair of guys, averaging right around that 20 points per game, and a guy like Caden Selby who's so unique. I mean, we're talking about White River, Castlewood, all these DeSmet, all these teams, and then you got this team way out in the West, kind of not playing any of these other teams. They might be the team that once they get to Aberdeen, they might show out and surprise all of us.
Yeah, Class B, man.
That's another one of those teams.
Just when you think that the top teams have had a carousel, we've got a couple other teams that people aren't really talking about that can make some noise as well. Let's move up to Class A. A couple of teams under the radar in that section. Rapid City Christian and Lennox. We'll take a look at Rapid City Christian first. Only losses this year to Pine Ridge in the LNI, and Sioux Valley at the Hanson Classic.
Yeah. So two big stages.
Yeah, their best win, 64-38 over White River when they were #1 in Class B. And their next test is going to be on the 23rd against Hot Springs. So Rapid City Christian flying under the radar to you. Why is that?
I think this is a team that's, again, very young team, and they've improved over last year. And you can kind of just see this arc of Rapid City Christian teams getting better and better. But they're not ranked because all these blue bloods are in Class A that we vote for every single year. The Sioux Falls Christians, the Sioux Valleys, all these teams kind of just have their spots in the top 5, and they haven't cracked that in yet with a big win. Can they get into that category? Well, they could have if they would have won one of those 2 games. I really think if they would have beaten Pine Ridge or if they would have beaten Sioux Valley, we'd be talking a lot more about them. But they played close with them. So I think this is a team you got to watch out for because they have not peaked quite yet, and they've got a ton of good scorers. It's going to be really interesting to see them play Hot Springs, an athletic team who's also very good out West River, and that might launch them into what could be, get it into the state tournament. Anything can happen.
Another team that's under the radar in Class A for you, Lennox.
Yeah.
Started 2-3. They're 8-1 since. Porter Enan is back after missing the first 9 games. He's played in the last 6. They're 5-1. Are Lennox in those games. They played Parkston, where he had limited minutes. Played Teospazina, where he played 27 minutes.
No, they had 27 points.
Or 27 points.
Yeah.
Excuse me. It had 27 points versus EPJ, where he had 31 at Western Christian.
You get the loss there, but
they
he
lost
played
to
well.
Western Christian, who's, like we said earlier, been fantastic
Yeah.
this year. Then played Viborg Hurley, where he had 24 points. And against Tri-Valley. They lost to Western Christian last week. Their best wins against Viborg Hurley, won by double digits on Saturday. They'll have tests against T-Area and Dakota Valley. Is Porter Enan maybe the reason why his absence is the reason why they were maybe flying under the radar, but now with him back, they'll start to get more notoriety?
I think so. I think their record, you're going to look at them with those few losses and kind of push them to the back again, but they need to be pulled back to the front. This is a team definitely to watch out for. And even when they didn't have Porter Enan, they started playing a little bit better, and then you get an all-world type player like Porter back, who he had a collarbone injury during the football season, and you can tell sometimes it takes a little while to get back on track, and sometimes you come out of the chute and you start getting 27, 30-point games. He's ready. It's for his senior year to really launch Lennox into the conversation in Class A.
All right, let's take a step up to Class 2A or Double A, whatever you want to call it, for the boys. We've got another couple of teams there in Double A. A couple of teams in these sections that you've recognized. We'll look at Class 2A now. Aberdeen Central and Brandon Valley. Aberdeen lost 6 of 7, then got wins against T and Harrisburg.
Big wins. 2
impressive wins. They did lose to Mitchell 68-56 on Tuesday, but they're flying a bit under the radar for you. What can they do to maybe get some more love?
Well, the problem was they did lose those 6 out of 7, and they kind of lost track. But this shows when you can regroup after a slide like that. To me, if high school kids can regroup, it means it's not broken. It can be fixed. And they showed just how well they can play when they went on the court and played against T and Harrisburg and got those wins, especially the Harrisburg win. That was huge for them. Yes, you played Mitchell. You kind of were in the game back and forth for a while before Mitchell pulled away. That's the #1 team in the state. They've got a couple big tests coming up. When they play Watertown again, I want to see how they do when they play a team like that, because they're kind of in the same boat right now, Aberdeen and Watertown. And I think if Aberdeen gets another win against Watertown, then we're talking about them as maybe one of those teams that could host a SODAC 16 game and get to the state tournament. And then, again, you showed you can compete with some really good teams. Maybe they make some noise in the tournament.
Right, of course, Shani, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Right now, Aberdeen's trying to finish strong. Last team that we'll be taking a look at is Brandon Valley, who we talked about before the show a little bit. They started 2-3, won 8 straight, including a 30-point win on Tuesday over Washington, who Washington was really hot the last time we talked about them. They won 7 of 8 games, but then they ran into the storm that is Brandon Valley right now. They have a balanced attack. They play great defense. They're going to be playing Mitchell on the 20th. Brandon Valley, they need some more love, don't they?
They do. They've got one key element that I don't think anybody in AA really has, and that's a solid big man who can shoot and who can just control the paint in Josh Olthoff, and that could be the key, because he's not necessarily going to show up in the box scores, but he's something that it's just a hard matchup for any team that plays Brandon Valley. And now Landon Delaney's able to drive and dish a little bit more. And then you've got 5 or 6 players that you can surround, and any one of those guys can come up with a big night. That's the formula for me, where they've really bought into team basketball. And boy, it's starting to reap some rewards now as they've ran off those 8 straight wins. They've got a couple of teams they play in the next few games that are right around 500. Not saying those games will be easy, but when they play Mitchell, we'll really know where they're at, and that's on February 20th. So we got a little time before that game, but I want to see how Brandon Valley does against those 500 type teams and see if they can really stick their neck out as one of the teams to beat.
Right. It's always tough to beat a team when any guy seemingly can go off on any given night. So it's always those are always the toughest teams to beat at the high school level. That'll do it for our under the radar teams. Let's move over and take a look at some of the big games coming up this week before our next show. Thursday night, we got Western Christian at Sioux Falls Christian. That's a huge.
We talked about that a little bit already, how big that would be for Sioux Falls Christian. They've lost a couple in a row to Western Christian. Western Christian's only loss this year came to Dakota Valley, and of course that's a team we saw Sioux Falls Christian take down. So I think, if you're putting a line on this one, you're probably going to pick Sioux Falls Christian, but still a huge game for them.
On Friday, Flandreau versus Lyman at the Corn Palace. Flandreau, again, was flying under the radar. This can be one that really separates them from the others, per se.
Yeah, there's a lot of good games on Friday at the Corn Palace. But this is the one at the DWU Classic. This is the one I really think could be interesting. Flandreau is going to have one of their toughest games in the rest of the season. It's going to be this game. After that, they don't have a huge challenge until the playoffs again. So we'll see how they do against Max Scott and Skylar Vollmer, who we talked about last week from Lyman, as they come in with just 1 loss.
All right, moving on to Saturday for the girls. Sioux Falls Christian at Mount Vernon Plankinton. That should be a really good one. We'll get to see Emilee Fox getting after it again. And then for the boys, Canastota versus White River at the Corn Palace, and Viborg Hurley at Hamlin inside the Corn Palace.
Well, we talked about Sioux Falls Christian, how they've been up and down. They beat T area, they lost to Vermilion, then they came back and beat the number 1 Sisseton team. Now they've got a challenge with Mount Vernon Plankinton. Mount Vernon Plankinton, they got a ton of athletes on that team. They don't have a big in the middle. That might be the one drawback for this Mount Vernon Plankinton team. But you do have Emilee Fox, and she is unbelievable, folks. If you have a chance to watch her, please do so. So that one will be huge. And then on the boys' side on Saturday, Canastota plays against White River, and then Viborg Hurley at Hamlin. So again, at the DWU Classic, you always have these good matchups where you get these teams and you really get to see where they're at. This is the game for White River to me. How will they bounce back off of a game that they just lost to Pine Ridge on Tuesday night? Now they don't have any losses in the class. This could be their first loss if they slip up to Canastota. And then Viborg Hurley, they lost a couple they did like to get back. They've got a really tough road ahead of them as they take on Hamlin. I think Hamlin, man, what they did to Sioux Valley last week was unbelievable. They took them out of the game, gave Sioux Valley their first loss of the year, were raining threes throughout the game. So I think Hamlin right now, if they continue this uprise, they're going to be the team we're talking about in middle of March.
All right, we got Sunday off, of course, and then Monday we're back at it with a big game for the girls, EPJ at Centerville.
We talked about EPJ. If they want to be recognized as a team to beat, they're going to have to get some big-time wins, and this is where it starts. Centerville's a really good team. Taya Gus has had a great year for them, but both teams need that win big time.
And then on Tuesday, to round things out, we got Mitchell at Washington, who's trying to get back on track. Sioux Valley at Castlewood, which would be a really good one. Castlewood, haven't really talked much about them the past couple of weeks, but I'm sure with a win, we'll be talking about them in our next show. And then, of course, Harrisburg at O'Gorman to round things out. Harrisburg at O'Gorman, that's a girls' game on Tuesday. So O'Gorman, a little bit of a test.
O'Gorman's going to get one of their biggest tests of the year. Harrisburg still they just have 1 loss in AA. They lost 2 other teams outside of the state, and then they lost to T, who was, of course, a Class A team, on Tuesday night. But this is huge for Harrisburg because they're a team that's been consistent this year up until Tuesday night when they lost to T area. O'Gorman is going to have their guns ready to go against a team that is going to come in and try to challenge them for that top spot in AA.
All right, yeah, so that'll do it. These are all the big games we got coming up this week. Should be a fun one. We're getting close to playoff time, getting close to Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Seed points matter. Everything. It's really the season is starting to
come to a crux.
come together, and we'll finally get to those coveted Sodak 16 that we all wanted to see all season long.
Yeah, so next week we're going to talk about the Dunkers, and then we're going to transition to pretty much playoff basketball after that on the show. So, not much time left for everybody to be at the top of their game.
Yeah, send in those dunks, please,
Yes.
please. You want to see them. It'll be a really fun, exciting show next week. You won't want to miss it. That'll do it for this edition of What's Hoops with myself and Jason Andera. Thank you for watching, as always, and be sure to tune in next week because it's going to be a doozy. You won't want to miss it.